Hey everyone, welcome to the Hallmarkies Podcast. My name is Jonathan North, and in today's episode, we're welcoming back Rachel Wagner. So far, Rachel has mainly joined me on this show to talk about things I wanted to talk about, so I thought it was high time I brought her on to talk about something she really loved. So today, Rachel has brought one of her favorite animated films to talk about, Song of the Sea. This is a film from the Irish animation studio Cartoon Saloon, the independent studio behind The Secret of the Kells and The Breadwinner. Before we get into this episode, I want to make sure you know that we'll be talking about this movie from beginning to end, so if you're opposed to spoilers, watch the movie first and then come back. We've done beginning to end analysis before, but so far that's mainly just been for well-known movies or stories, like the Disney canon or various Alice in Wonderland adaptations. With this one, I know it's one that nowhere near as many people are going to have seen, and there's a lot of surprises throughout, so I wanted to make sure you get ample warning in case you wanted to see the film first. Either way, I highly recommend this film, so if you're interested, definitely find a copy. You won't be disappointed. Okay, I think that's about all I've got to say before we begin. Let's get on with our review of Song of the Sea.
I guess the first thing is, why don't you tell us why you love this movie so much? I know you've even talked to the director, so let's just talk about some of that.
Yes, so I do love this movie. This was the first time that I ever set the goal in 2014 to see all of the animated films that were submitted to the Academy for Best Animated Film. And I've done that every year since then. And I didn't get to see this until after it had already been nominated because it didn't come to Salt Lake until February. I'd heard that was really great, and that it got the nomination over the Lego Movie. So what is this movie? And just a month or so before, my cousin had passed away, and she had two little boys. And we weren't super close, but it was just a sad event to have happened. This mother of two, little boys to pass away, and went to her funeral, and her little boy spoke, and he just talked about how he could never understand how this could have happened and why God would let this happen. It was just devastating, of course. And then, not long after, I saw this movie, and I was just a wreck by the end of it. Because not only is it beautifully animated, a beautiful story, it's got everything I think you could want in a story, but also just the character of Ben connected so much with my cousin's son and what he had just said, and his not being able to get over the death of his mother. And so I connected so much to that little boy and his emotions and his feeling about his sister. I thought that was just really emotionally true and really raw. In fact, when I did the review on my channel way back then, it's not a great review. It's kind of hard to hear me. It's not the best, but oh well. And I just started to cry on the review. And somehow they ended up hearing about it in Cartoon Salon. And in my interview with Tomm Moore, he said that they kind of passed that review around, and everybody just really liked it and was grateful that somebody, was so touched by it. And so that was really cool that he remembered my little review. Mm-hmm. And it was just something that really touched me very much, this little boy trying to deal with the loss of his mom. I thought it was very, very emotionally true.
Yeah. Have you ever introduced this to your cousin's kids?
I mentioned it, but I'm honestly not that close with them. I mean, I'll see them once in a while at family gatherings or something like that. But I have mentioned it a couple of times that I thought they'd really like it. Now, luckily, their dad is remarried and actually now have a little girl, and so things are much better than they were then for the family. But I did mention it a couple times, but so who knows if they ended up seeing it or not. Sometimes things might be a little too close to home, I think maybe, but anyway, I just felt like he was some people would say he's an unlikable character because he does lash out and he's kind of a grumpy character. But for me, I felt like it was totally true. That's exactly how a little boy would respond. and especially because Saoirse doesn't speak and doesn't, so he can just kind of get more and more frustrated, and then when he finally does get to say goodbye to his mom at the end, it's just, oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, the end. Oh wow, I love the end so much.
It's so good.
So I guess we could just start at the beginning. And I don't know if I'm going to pronounce all these names right. Some of the names of the creatures I'm not even going to try to pronounce. These are all like Celtic myths, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know how to pronounce Selkies because I've heard of them before, but there's other things in here that I'm not even going to try. I'll just call them all fairies because I know I can say fairy.
Yeah.
But the mom, I think her name is Brana. I'm not 100% sure. I only heard her name in the movie a couple times. I think they said Brana. It's one of those things. It's a Celtic name or Irish name, I guess. Not familiar to me. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it starts with her and Ben, the little boy, and he's like 4, and he has the cutest little voice. I love it when they get little kids to voice little animated characters.
Me too.
It just adds so much to it. Like, have you heard of the cartoon We Bare Bears?
Yeah, I love We Bare Bears.
The baby bears on there are some of my favorite things because they got actual little teeny children to voice the characters. And this is another one of those things where it's a little kid just adds so much.
Yeah, I love that about the Peanuts movie as well. It's all all children and children characters, voice actors. It helps a lot for sure.
Yeah. So the mom is telling Ben about Selkies, which are, I guess they're like a seal version of a mermaid, except they like turn into complete seals.
Yeah.
I'm not completely familiar with Selkies, but I know enough to know that they're like a mythical seal creature.
Yeah.
She puts Ben to bed, but you see that something's not right. She seems to be in pain, and then
she's pregnant.
Yeah. He says something like he can't wait for the baby to come, something like that. And you can tell that the birth seems to be imminent because she's kind of huge.
Mm-hmm.
But she puts him to bed, and something isn't right. She seems to be in pain. And then he wakes up and she's gone. Yeah. And it never explains where she went. You just kind of assume that she died in childbirth.
I kind of like in this movie that they don't really take the time to bog down the film in exposition. And that's sometimes a problem for me with fantasy films, is that they start to lose me because they get too worried. Whereas this, all we need to know is the emotion that's happening. Mm-hmm. We do not need to know all the explanation of the world and the lore, and all we need to know is the character is sad, his mother is gone.
Yeah. I usually like more explanation, but this one, it didn't seem to matter. It felt more natural because you're following this little boy who has no idea what's going on.
Right.
And to me, it didn't really matter that they didn't explain it very much. I guess I just accepted everything at face value. She's gone, and there's
the core emotion.
Yeah. So it fast forwards, I think it's like 6 years. Well, it is 6 years because it's the little girl's birthday. Saoirse, I think. The spelling is not English, so I tried to write it phonetically in my notes first before it's spelled Saoirse.
Right.
Pronounced Saoirse.
Saoirse, yeah.
One of those Celtic names that does not sound how it looks. But she can't speak, and she's turning 6, and it doesn't really explain why she can't speak. It's another thing that I just accepted. She can't speak. It's her birthday. They're at the seashore playing. She sees seals, which is kind of a hint about something, and she's like wading out into the water, and their dog, Coo, which it's spelled C-U, and I thought that's such a cute name for this giant dog, Coo. He pulls Ben into the water. Dog. Yeah. And Ben is annoyed. And he forces Saoirse home at squirt gun point, which I about died laughing because he's pointing this squirt gun at her and marching her home.
Yeah. And like I know that his behavior obviously isn't like good behavior, but like it's understandable behavior. Because
Yeah.
his father is completely debilitated and unable to deal with these two children. And so he's just got this basically this broken heart without a mother and without an active father. And
Hmm.
so this sister who can't speak and who literally took his mother away from him, it's natural, I think, his experience. So I don't find it irritating because
Hmm.
it's valid. It's emotionally true.
Yes. So then you realize that they live on an island in a lighthouse, which I thought was such a cool detail.
Yeah.
I I've always loved lighthouses. Like I love stories that take place in lighthouses. So I
Hmm.
thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I love the ocean, and I love the way they animate the ocean in this
Mhm.
movie. It's so beautiful and swirly, and just it's great.
The art style in this entire thing is gorgeous. It's all hand drawn animation. I just love it. It's so unique. Nothing like we get normally in the US.
Hmm.
I just
Yeah.
love it.
And they had done a previous film, The Secret of the Kells, which also had a similar animation style. Tomm Moore, that's kind of the director, his style.
Hmm.
But I don't know, I love the humanity, and it's just so peaceful. Like watching his animation, it's like you could watch this movie and do yoga at the same time. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I
It's
need to
very
see
soothing.
Secret of the Kells now because I haven't seen that one either. And after this one, I'm like, I gotta see more from him.
Yeah, I like this one better than Secret of the Kells, but they're both really wonderful, wonderful films, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
So then, in order for anyone to visit them, they have to come over by ferry. So their granny comes to visit for her birthday, and I thought it was so funny that she arrives on ferry in her little car, and she's just sitting in the car, kind of glowering. She won't get out of the car when she's on the boat. The granny was like kind of annoying, but I kind of loved that about her. Just this cranky old lady.
Yeah, she's one who's the villain in the eyes of the children, obviously, but
Mhm.
she's trying to do what's right. At least she's
Yeah,
so that makes her. There's two characters, her and also the owl witch lady. They're both really sympathetic characters, even though they are sort of the villain of the
yeah.
story.
I really liked that about this movie. Like, the bad guys aren't really bad, and you understand why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Hmm.
Ultimately, they're not the best things. You completely understand why they're acting like this, and I really like that about the movie.
Yeah.
So she comes for the birthday. She seems kind of annoyed at everything. She's annoyed that Saoirse can't talk. They're having this party for her, and Ben slams her face into the cake. Well, he slams his sister's face into the cake because he's mad that she keeps taking his shell from his mother. So he gets
Hmm.
back at her by slamming her face into her birthday cake. Uh, it was one of those things like he's a bad little kid, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that night, the dad leaves, and I didn't quite get it at first, but I realized it's her sixth birthday. So that means it's also the anniversary of his wife's death.
Yeah.
So he's going, presumably, to drink alone in the pub, but he
Yeah.
doesn't really even drink. He just kind of sits there with the glass in front of him and doesn't really even touch it.
Yeah. He's just completely kind of shut himself off from everything, even his own children.
Hmm.
Then we get the first scene of Circe swimming, which I love. It's so beautiful.
Mm. Yeah, Ben tells her a scary story about a giant and the giant's mother, who is an owl witch, who takes the giant's feelings and turns him to stone. And this scares Saoirse because he makes her think that this owl witch is going to come and do this to their father. And he says that if the owl witch comes and does this, she won't have anyone to love her anymore. So in the middle of the night, she runs off. Well, she gets the shell. She's playing the shell as a musical instrument. I'm sure this is some sort of Celtic lore. It seemed very similar to the Will o' the Wisps and Brave, just these magical lights
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good comparison.
that appear, and they're like floating over the water and into the town, and you see these little people noticing these magical sparkles. But these magical sparkles lead her to a white coat, presumably her mother's, and she takes it outside, finds the seals, and goes into the water and becomes a seal. The whole scene, I just loved this so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the music is perfect. Just all the swirling and the imagery and it's so beautiful. It's so great.
When she's under the water, you see all the creatures like whales and jellyfish and anemones. It's so awesome. I loved this whole thing. So then the granny wakes up. She runs outside. She's calling for Circe. She finds her on the shore, carries her back to the lighthouse. And the seals are all watching this happen. And then the dad returns, and she's yelling at him, telling him the island is no place for the kids because she found Circe lying on the seashore.
And she's right. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are not being cared for adequately. Mm-hmm. So she is right.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's kind of like taking their home away if she were to take them. Yeah. You know why she's doing it. And I guess eventually the dad sees that she's right and lets her take the kids.
Yeah. And he locks the silky coat in a chest, throws it in the ocean, which is a huge problem, becomes for Circe to be able to survive. He doesn't seem to understand what's going on.
I'm not sure if it was ever explained how aware he was that his wife was a Selkie. He doesn't seem that surprised at the end, but he doesn't seem to connect that with his daughter at all.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to understand what is going on with his child, or he just doesn't care. I don't know what's going on there, but and he says, "Oh, I'm not going to lose her too." And so, but then he seems to think throwing the coat over will somehow save her when it's really going to end up killing her, or almost killing her.
Mm-hmm. So Granny takes them back to her house, and her house is so very much an old lady's house. I loved all the details in her house. She's playing the old lady music. She's got all the little knickknacks everywhere. There's like pictures of Jesus. I loved her house.
Yeah, it's so good. And then you just love Halloween, the way it was animated.
Oh yeah, like you see all the little kids outside walking around in their little costumes.
It was so cute. Yeah. It was so good.
But of course, Ben is not happy about this, and he's just sitting on the couch playing what sounds like some kind of angry rock music on his headphones. And Circe leaves. She's told that she should not be using the good towels if she's going to the restroom. Another thing that old ladies say, apparently.
Yeah. Got the plastic on the sofas and stuff like that.
But Circe finds a coat in her granny's closet and puts on the coat. It's not like a magical coat like the Selkie coat, but she puts it on anyways. And then she's in the shower, just letting the water run over her while she's playing the sparkly magical flute again. And the tub overflows, and Granny is furious and puts him to bed at 4:00 in the afternoon. And of course, Ben is mad about this. And Granny goes outside to throw away the coat, and there's 3 people in the trash can, and she thinks they're trick-or-treating kids. They're apparently fairies.
Yeah.
Like little old man fairies.
I love them. I love the animation, and I love the music with them. It was so fun.
Yeah, the music. I love the music in this movie.
It was so good.
Yes. The kids are in bed, and after the granny throws away the coat, the kids escape. Ben wants to go back for Ku, but they end up running into these 3 little old man fairies who recognize Circe as a Selkie.
Mm-hmm. And these fairies have been cursed, so they think the Selkie song and everything will rid the curse that's caused by this owl witch. Mm-hmm. And then we get to meet the owl witch a little bit later.
Yeah, they're being followed by these owls who are trying to turn all the fairies to stone. Like he was telling the story about the giant being turned to stone. This owl witch is real, and her little minion owls, which I love the design of her owls.
Oh, amazing.
I love owls anyway, but I love this particular design. It was just so
Yeah, it was really good.
Cool.
Because the Owl Witch, she believes that, so her son was so sad about a lost love, I think, and was so sad that he cried a whole ocean, and she wanted to save him from all that pain, and so she turned him into stone. And so she decided that, well, she's going to do something supposedly good and remove all of this pain from people. And so she stores the pain kind of in jars, and then they turn to stone. So she thinks that she's helping people, but she's really obviously not. But it makes her a scary but likable, in the end at least, likable villain, an interesting villain at least.
Yeah, after you realize that she doesn't actually mean to harm people.
Yeah.
It's a lot more likable. So they're with these fairies, but they're being followed by the owls. And the fairies want her to sing her song, but of course she can't talk. And once they realize that she needs her coat, they try and get them to go find her coat so that she can sing. But they're attacked by the owls, and the owls turn the fairies to stone. Temporarily. Well, sort of temporarily. They smash the jars that are capturing their feelings. Their heads are unstonified temporarily. Yeah. They're given instructions and they escape from the owls. So they leave the little hideout and it exit through a mailbox, which was another little detail that I liked. I liked that they were sort of in this, I don't know if it was another dimension or what, but they were in the little house, but then when they left, they were across the street coming out of the mailbox.
Yeah, so, that's true. There's so many little details. You can do a whole show. We could do multiple episodes just on each part of this movie, I think.
So they get into a bus and they're trying to get back to the shore so they can get on the ferry and go home. They want to get back to Koo still. And now they have the added thing of trying to find the code as well. And while they're on the bus, she starts playing her shell, and she realizes, I'm not sure exactly how, she realizes they need to get off the bus. And she makes them get out through the emergency exit.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're kind of getting lost in the woods. And he's trying to follow this map that he made, but she wants to go this other way. And they end up at this tiny little, it's not really a house. He calls it like a holy well or something.
Yeah, it's like a well.
But they also find Koo in the woods because Koo had swam across the ocean to get to them. In the woods, Circe is looking really weak and her hair starts turning white. And I'm not sure if this well is supposed to be something, is it like a specific part of Celtic lore? I wasn't really sure, but it seemed like something that, obviously there's this holy well.
Yeah.
It seemed like something that we should know about, and I didn't really know about it. Or was another thing that I just had to go with.
Right. Yeah.
But I also love the detail of this woods that is around this well, because you have all these adorable little creatures like the fox and the badgers. And there's also randomly like a broken TV and washing machine. That just cracked me up. I was like, what are these appliances doing out in the woods?
Yeah.
So they're hiding in this building that is holding this well, and she dives into the well, and he's like freaking out because he doesn't want to dive in after her, but he's still attached to Koo by the leash. Koo jumps in, dragging him into the well, but then the leash breaks. Earlier, when the magic sparkles were flying through the town, you saw this hair creature. Mm-hmm. That's how I was describing it, as a hair creature. He looked like a white cousin It from the Addams Family. I couldn't tell what it was. So in this well, she jumps in the water. They all get separated. After the leash breaks, he comes to the surface, and he's just floating through this cave thing on this boat that was there. And he finds the hair creature. And you also see that Circe has been caught by the owls. It doesn't really show what happened. You just see far above wherever Ben is, she's being taken by the owls. So he finds this guy. He looks sort of like the old man fairies. He has a specific name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, some Celtic name, and he stores memory in his hair. And he has a ton of hair. Like, his hair is everywhere. Like, the entire cave is full of his hair. And apparently every hair has a story. He also has a very bad memory. So he kind of forgets Ben after he meets him. But then he retells the story about the owl witch.
Yeah.
And you realize that maybe she's not as evil as the original story made her seem to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the hair creature tells him that the owls have his sister, and he gives him a way out. He has to follow his hair to get out of the cave. But then the hair creature forgets him again. So Ben follows the hair. He's leaving the cave, but he starts to see visions of his mother. And these visions sort of fill in the gaps of what happened the night that she died. You see that her hair was turning the same white that Circe's was just a little while ago in the woods. And she's leaving the house. Like, I think maybe she's turning back into a Selkie, like she can't be human anymore. Another one of the things you just go with. And Connor is chasing her out of the house, and she's calling back that she has no more time. She has to save the baby. And he follows her into the sea. She says that she's sorry and disappears under a wave. And then you see him washing back up on shore with the baby in his arms.
Yeah, because I think her delivering a Selkie required that.
Okay.
Whereas Ben wasn't, so it didn't require it.
Mm-hmm. She never comes back. It shows him back inside holding the baby, introducing her to Ben. And he's just kind of looking at her. And I kind of expected him to get upset, but then that's where the vision/memory ends. So you don't really know what happened after that.
That's what I think this does so well, because it has the great characters, it has the emotion, but then it's also an adventure. I mean, every step of the way is new and exciting, and an adventure. It's unpredictable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So after this vision, the hair parts and he sees the way out, and he climbs out of a tree trunk, and in the distance he sees a house with a thunderstorm over it, which this is where you have Maka, the owl witch. And I really liked her. She seemed like a Studio Ghibli character.
Yeah, and he was very inspired by Studio Ghibli. Tomm Moore was.
That makes sense. Like, the whole thing, everything with the witch seemed very Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, I agree.
So he meets her, and you realize that everything she's doing, she thinks she's doing the right thing. She's taking everyone's emotions, she's turning them to stone, but she's trying to save them from the pain of their emotions. And she's almost turning Ben to stone, but you hear coos barking outside, and she's stopped. And you also realize that she's been using her own magic on herself, and she's like half stone already. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, because of her son, that's why.
Mm-hmm. So Ben escapes to the attic and finds Circe half stone, and she's surrounded by piles and piles and piles of jars of feelings. And he sings to her. She starts playing the shell. The jars break, and all of the feelings were the ones that the witch had been taking from herself. So they're all swirling around and go back to her, because they were hers originally.
I mean, and that's a pretty tense scene with them, poking in and getting closer and closer and closer. And so I think that works really well.
Yeah, the whole thing was really good, really well paced, really exciting.
Yeah. And
the scene with all the feelings flying back into her, and she's like overcome with all of her feelings. It's so good.
Yeah.
So Circe's also turning back to human. She's still extremely weak though. She drops the shell and it smashes on the floor. So the witch, she's back to human-ish. She's still like part owl or whatever. But she's like sobbing over her actions and what happened to her son. And Ben is begging her for help. And she has another jar that has 2 dog spirits in it. And I wasn't sure if these dog spirits were like some specific Celtic creature. They looked like giant Scottish terriers. except they didn't have long hair. They just had really long legs. I really liked their design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
So,
All the design is just so great. It's so
mhm.
inventive. It's so soothing. It's so calming. It fits the tone so well. It has
Yeah.
that darkness, but it also always has some hope to it,
Mm-hmm.
combined with the music, especially.
Mm-hmm. So these dog spirits bring them back to the island. And in the middle of all this, Granny wakes up and realizes the kids are gone. And she starts driving in her nightgown. And I was thinking, so she put them to bed at 4 and she just never checked on them again.
Well, you know.
It's been a while since she had kids of her own, I guess. So they get back to the lighthouse, and Ben is demanding to know where the coat is. And Connor sees that Saoirse is sick. He's going to get her back to the hospital, but there's a storm. And for some reason, he thinks it's a good idea to try and row them back to shore in this little boat. And he tells Ben that he's thrown the coat into the ocean. But Ben is determined to get the coat back. And in the middle of this storm, in the middle of the ocean, he dives in to try and find the coat for her. And
that's such a great scene. I love it. And you know, the dad is just clueless. He doesn't understand. And I kind of love that in movies with children where they just go ahead and make the right decision anyway. They're like, I'm sorry. This is what has to happen. And I always kind of like that little bit of independence.
So Ben is aided by the seals. They take him to the coat. They help him get it out of the box that it was locked in. And he passes out, but the seals take him back to the surface. And Connor drags him back up and brings him back to the boat. And I guess Koo was more aware than you think, too, because he grabs the coat and puts it over Saoirse. And she says her first word as she's waking up, which is Ben. And those two dog spirits come back and dump them all into the ocean. And Saoirse turns into a seal. And then all of the seals kind of escort them to the nearest land, which turns out to be the island that was the giant from the story, the son of the Owl Witch. But then you see that Saoirse is very weak still. She's fine when she's a seal in seal form, but when she's a girl, she's still very weak. Ben knows that she needs to sing her song that the fairies wanted her to sing to help everybody. So he helps her to sing. And she
I love that. I love that. So good.
This whole scene is like I was watching this and texting you at the same time. It's so magical.
So I'm crying when I watch it. And it's just so great. It's so moving, and you've seen so much growth from the characters. Because maybe he starts out a little bit whiny, but look at where he ends. Look at the person he's become. Like, he's such a dynamic character.
Yeah, this whole scene is just
it's so cute that Circe's first word is Ben. That's just perfect.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so good.
So she's like floating up into the sky singing. There's like a magical glowing happening around her, and all of the creatures are being healed as she's singing. You see all the little fairies that have been turned to stone coming back to life. The island comes back to life, and then the Owl Witch comes and he's reunited with his mother. I'm not sure exactly why, but the song means that everyone who is a magical creature has to leave. I'm not sure if they're leaving the planet or going to somewhere else. Just they're leaving, and there's no choice. Everybody has to leave. And suddenly their mother is there. She comes to see them one last time, and Saoirse...
And she's going to take Circe with her.
Saoirse goes to join her, and Ben is running after them, begging her not to take her sister.
Oh, I'm gone by that point. I am a mess.
Yes. Connor joins them.
Issues are happening.
Yes. He says she's all we have. And Brana turns around and like her tears are like floating away from her face. It's so magical, even though it's so sad.
Yeah, it's so good. And that Ben has that moment to say goodbye to his mother that he didn't have, that closure. Like, it's so powerful.
So Brana tells them that she has to leave tonight. All of her kind have to leave. But Saoirse is part human, so she can choose to stay if she wants. but if she takes her coat, their worlds will be untangled. Like, there's no going back. And Saoirse wants to stay with her brother and father, which kind of makes sense because she never met her mother to begin with. So she would be leaving everything she ever knew if she chose to go with her mother.
Yeah.
So they have a little moment, a hug goodbye. She got to meet her mother as she left forever. And she and Connor, they like reaffirm their love. They kiss to say goodbye. And Brana tells Ben to remember her in his stories.
Oh, so good.
Such a good line. She kisses him on the forehead. And like the last thing that anyone says as she's leaving is Saoirse just saying bye. Which, I don't know, her tiny little bye was so cute.
Yeah, that's so good.
So the family gets back to the island. They find Granny with the ferryman. And she's still in her nightgown. She thought they were all dead. And Connor tells her that they're all right now. And he hugs her and they all go back to the lighthouse.
And you get the feeling that this has really changed him. And that he's going to, step it up.
Yeah.
Maybe he got the closure that he needed as well.
Yes, definitely. And the credits are playing and you see these little scenes from their life later on. Connor and Ben are painting the scenes from their story. Granny now lives with them, which I think is probably for the best. And the ferryman seemed to stay too. I don't know if he and Granny had a thing. Like,
I didn't notice that.
Kept calling her a witch earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
But just been having a picnic, and now it's Ben's birthday, and Saoirse smashes his face into the cake.
Yeah, I just love it. I think it is such a moving, lovely. It's got it all.
Yeah,
it's an incredible animated film, and I love it. And I go back and forth because the same year is when Inside Out came out, and I love Inside Out. But those are two just incredible films. So I don't know, they're both great.
I knew that this was going to be good because I've heard you sing its praises before, but I didn't realize just how amazing it was.
I'm so glad you liked it. It's always when you have, I don't have that many movies that I have like a super strong connection with that I feel really passionate about. Like most of the time I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. You don't like it. But this is one that I like, I do have that kind of person. Like it hurts my heart a little bit if people don't like it. I'm like it. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, this is one that's like, I don't know how anyone could not like this movie. I was just blown away. It was so good.
I think it has something for everybody, and I didn't find it boring at all. I love it. So
highly recommend it to literally anyone.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, too, because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, is this going to be too sad for little kids? But every single little child that I have ever either watched it with or encouraged to watch it have loved it, wanted to watch it repeatedly over and over and over again. I haven't met any children, whether kids of my friends or my nieces, that it was a problem for. They all love it. So that's my experience, at least.
Yeah, I think it'll probably depend on the kid, but this really seems like something that would be good to help, I don't know, introduce kids to something a little more emotional, something a little deeper than, not that Disney isn't deep, but most Disney is
these days
not as deep as this.
It's more your like old school Disney, your Pinocchios and your your Bambis and your stuff like that.
Well,
Dumbo,
dying mother. Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of The Secret of NIMH, and just the way that the mythology and the darkness is kind of weaving through, and it's just sort of the hopeful tone of the characters and the story and everything.
I can see that. I need to see that movie again. Like, I remember watching it when I was younger, and I was so upset because it was so different from the book. Like, I loved that book, and like they changed so much, and I was like, this is not like the book. And I think that fact made me not like the movie as much as I would have otherwise if I hadn't read the book. Looking back at different things, I realized the movie is probably really good. and I just didn't like it because I was too much of a stickler for the book. It must be true to the book.
That makes sense. It's one of my top 10 favorite animated films. I love it. I just love, I love animated films that have sort of a feeling of hope in them. And I think this does, I think Sir of Nim does, and I think Prince of Egypt does. And the animation and the music, all three of those, is very peaceful and very calming, and just there's a reverence almost to them. And I know I just love all three of those movies. I think they have very similar kind of tones, even though the stories are quite different. But anyway, yeah, all three of those are in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah, they're really good.
So
maybe sometime we could do The Secret of Nim. Like, I need to rewatch that, and maybe we could. Yeah,
that'd be fun. And we can have our fiery debate about whether they should do a real photorealistic.
I think there's room for multiple.
Terrible idea. Realistic rat. Oh, anyway. But yeah, I'm so glad that you liked it. It's just a really special little movie, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's all for this one. Well, we'll definitely have to do this again. We already have one recorded that will come out later. We're talking about the live-action Dumbo. But yeah, we should definitely do another animated one. I think Secret of Nim would be a great one to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know. And yeah, if anybody's listening, if you've seen this movie, please let us know what you think.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can listen to my interview with the animator Tomm Moore, the director.
Oh yeah, I'll link that below.
So that was really fun to get to do that.
Do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media and on iTunes and YouTube. I'm also at Hallmarkies Podcast, everywhere. So I'm just everywhere right now. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll have her links below for people who want to find her online.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining me. We'll have to do this again.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to Rachel for joining me on this episode. You can find links to all her projects, including her interview with Tomm Moore, in the description below. Next week, we'll have a brand new guest on the show, one of the co-hosts of the Rotoscopers podcast, which is also the website that I write for, Chelsea Robson. I asked Chelsea to pick out one of her favorite films to talk about, regardless if it was animation or not, and she chose the 1954 Audrey Hepburn film, Sabrina. I'd never seen this movie before, so I'm excited to talk with her about it. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening.